Eddie was a member and active in this church when Reverend Hunsinger was here, and they asked him if he could be actually here and help officiate at the service, but he was unable to. But he offered to give some words, and so he sent some written words and so on. So let me just share with you as if I am him. Not that I could ever step into his wonderful persona and voice, but these are his thoughts that he wanted to share with you this morning. We've come together this Saturday morning to honor the life of Evelyn Nottelmann. Most of us refer to her as Evie. I say most of us. Marcia, Greg, and Diane speak of her as mother and call her mom. For my part, in a long association with her, the first identifying reference to her when I asked a church member who she was, responded, "She's one of the chant girls." And this statement flowed back on me as if it summed up all that needed to be known of her. This brings me to ask of you, as you reflect upon the life of Evelyn Nottelmann, who was she to you? It's a fair question, not in the sense that anyone fully knows anyone else, but in the fair sense of who was she when you first met her? More recent friends might refer to her as a longtime member of First Church, who always treated them with a broad smile and a sense of gracious regard. What I'm asking you to consider is the phase of her life that you came to know her. Was it during childhood, or adulthood, or maturity? It makes a difference when we consider the time we walked on the stage and took up a part with her on that stage. So let me tell you a bit of how I entered from stage left and took a part in the life role played out by Evelyn Nottelmann. As I said, she was first identified to me as being one of the chant girls. Needless to say, I felt at a disadvantage. I did not know the chant family. Whether there were 2 or 5 girls in the family was yet a mystery to me. I did know that she was married because she appeared to be happily engaged in conversation with one that could only be her husband. Later, I came to know that Evelyn was one of 3 daughters and grew up in Elmhurst. This church was the church the chants were members of, and the girls were apparently very attractive and popular among their peers. I, as Evelyn's clergyman for 35 years, came to know how much she cherished her sisters. I shared in Evelyn's joy in learning that her sister Margaret became First Lady of Greece, and I was there for her in the untimely decline in health and death of her youngest sister. As things turned out, it was an apt reference at the time. Evie was one of the chant girls. When I entered her life role, as I said, from stage left, I came upon Evie as a wife and mother of 3. She and Everett were part of the Elmhurst scene and were numbered among those whose companionship was sought after and enjoyed. At every community event, they were part of the select group people delighted in knowing and being with. During this time, Evelyn was an active member in the life of the church. She was always willing to do her part in assuming responsibilities that came her way. She was loyal in her friendships and available to help others along their ways. And while she was part of an elite group, Evelyn was not an elitist. She cared about others and concerned herself with her family. She loved her children and cared for them at every twist and turn. She agonized at the dissolution of her marriage to Everett and moved into another act in the drama played out on her life stage as a single mother. It was during this time that she developed a support group for women with like experiences to hers and maintained the strength of her faith in meeting obstacles that could have diminished her effectiveness as a person. To her credit, she carried on. She laid hold of her strengths, she lamented and tried to overcome her weaknesses, and she continued to be loyal and devoted to her family, to her church, and to her friends. In yet another act in her life role, Bob Nottelmann came on stage, and in the course of events, he and Evelyn were married. It was to be of good fortune for both of them. And while time was relatively short for their togetherness, Evie and Bob were strong members of First Church and contributed their time and work in many, many ways. After Bob's death, Evie continued to play out her life role as one of the chant girls who grew up in Elmhurst and was a faithful member of First Church, was a devoted and caring mother who carried with dignity her selfhood to the very end. Can it not be said, you have done well, dear one. Exit stage right. And let me add one short paragraph. Evelyn was a person who appeared sometimes to be overly concerned with herself, and that appearance enabled her, I feel, to survive her disappointments and failures. Furthermore, it enabled her to lay hold of her faith. It was her handrail. It was her guide. Alongside that faith, she took on courage in her life role. She sometimes assumed more than she could manage, but she rarely, if ever, blamed someone else for her many difficult times and experiences. In that, she laid hold of the strength from her deep devotion to the man from Nazareth, her redeeming and renewing Lord. Lastly, Evelyn had the capacity to be a loving person, and thereby was loved in return. I am confident that she now resides in God's eternal care, where the embrace of God's everlasting arms will enfold her with a love that never lets go. Blessings upon you, Marcia, and Greg, and Diane. And blessings upon you all. Reverend Hunsinger. Thank you. Is there anyone else who has a memory, a story, something that, how you would like to remember? Evie, I invite you to stand, okay?
I'm Ellen Weil. I have the honor of being married to Joanne, who's the youngest of the James sisters. So we've been around a long time. I remember Evelyn as all of these things. We got to know her when we lived on Kenilworth, and went swimming in their pool, and went up to the lake in Wisconsin with them, and really had a great time and had great memories about that. But I suppose the most enduring memory I have is our reunion from the mid-90s, where we were in Estes Park, Colorado, and it was a close family vacation, a lot of interchange among everyone. But one day, some of us got kind of cocky, and we challenged Evelyn to come out to play golf with us at the golf course in Estes Park. Well, I won't go into the bloody details, but she cleaned our clock. And it was, I tried to forget that, but I can't. When she was with us later on, I think when we went up on Trail Ridge Road, which is the road going out of Estes Park and across the Continental Divide way up. And we're at about 11,000 feet. And my daughter, Sandra, her husband, Pat, suggested that we hit some golf balls. So we did. We got out of the car and looked out down at Forest Canyon, which is about 1,000 feet down here, up at Long's Peak, which is about 12,200 or some feet. And we proceeded to hit some golf balls in the Forest Canyon because who was going to get the longest drive. It was a great memory. I'll always remember her. She was a wonderful lady, and I'm pleased to have been a part of her memory.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure.
specifically remember the story. I don't necessarily remember doing it, but she was Enen to me. That was her name. I didn't know her as anything else. And I also knew her as the full of spirit, wonderful woman who drove a fast red car. And I didn't know really how she fit into my life at first. I mean, I knew she was Dad's mom, but I didn't realize any of the hardship ever in her life. She was so strong and beautiful, and I had this all planned out in my head, how I was going to say this, sorry. But she was not my grandmother in my head. She was never the white-haired woman that, maybe my mom's mom was, who I also loved, but she was intense and beautiful and full of life. I mean, I think, learned half of my humor from her and half of it from my own mom. I never saw her as a couple. She was single and just amazing. I don't know how else to say that. But she ruled the roost, I guess you could say. I mean, she ran the family, from what I knew, I spent a lot of time with her actually young in Chicago, and she would also come to Phoenix, because that's where I live, and she loved the sun. And in Chicago, you don't get like the sun like you do in Arizona, and I just remember her, we're going to try and emulate, okay? Out in the atrium, we had an atrium in our home, and it was open to the air. And so she'd sit out there with her beautiful, stylish outfit, whatever she'd be wearing. It was always flowing and bright, and the sun would soak her up. It wasn't the other way, it wasn't ever the other way around. She wanted the sun to see her. So that's how that felt to me always. I mean, I know she loved to golf. I never saw her golf, but I know that was such a big part of her life. We all have our small regrets. I always wanted to golf with her, and I just was never into golf. I rode horses, and I was in the dirt, and that was me, but I know she loved it. And she went after every single thing that she ever wanted to do, and I feel like I have that strength, not 100% like her, but she literally went after everything that she wanted. Love, and life, and knowledge. She just went for it, always, all the time. And so I really the other thing is that I'm so happy to know that there is this huge family that I don't always think about, because my family's gotten very small in my head. And so it's very, very lovely to see all of you as my family. And I thank God that she had sisters, and that there are nieces and nephews, and second cousins for me, third cousins for me, because my side was small, and I was her only granddaughter, so I'm just very lucky to have that side of her family here, and to know you guys are in existence at all. So thank you, everyone, and she'll always be my Enen, so thank you for being here.